Welcome to the Coronavirus channel, our third episode with Peter Lamb. And today we're going to be discussing about the NHS. Is this voluntary system that the Boris Johnson and the government created? They've got over 750,000 volunteers, but not everyone is being used adequately. You know, is this system really working, this voluntary NHS system?
I actually don't know, Mike, but my personal opinion of the voluntary system is I think it was flawed from the start. For starters, 750,000, it was fantastic turnout from people to volunteer, but there was never going to be need for 750,000 volunteers. So a couple of things have occurred there. I mean, people are disappointed because they've gone to the effort of volunteering and then they haven't actually been asked to do anything. So they're sitting around waiting for the call, if you like, but it just never comes. And the other thing, that the initial problem I had with it is that these people are not tested, none of them. So you're asking some of these group of people to go out into the community to help the most vulnerable people, but they haven't been tested themselves. So who's to say that they're not going to pass the virus on to the people they're trying to help? So I think the thing was ill thought through right from the start.
See, I think it's interesting that you're saying about testing, because they've got the home testing kits that were released on the website yesterday, and they had inundated over like 10,000 people who needed it, because I think they need it for about 50,000 people there to like test these kits, especially for key workers. You know, let's get this right. This is for key workers. Yeah, now, like you said the other time, this government is playing hamster. They're on a hamster. They're playing catch up with everything that they're doing at the moment. It doesn't seem to be enough home testing available.
Yeah, even the key workers, Monty. I mean, I heard on the radio, on Radio 4, that a government minister said that there's no vetting procedure for people to ask for these tests. So even though they say key workers, anybody can log on and request a test. And there's no vetting to find out whether they're a key worker or whether they're not a key worker. So the government doesn't even know that these tests are going out to the right people.
Yeah, so there's a couple of issues. They haven't got enough home testing kits where they should have a lot. Yeah. They also, some people are questioning that, is this the NHS voluntary system working? Like, I'm an NHS volunteer myself. I've had I've had 4 requests this week. Right. And I've downloaded the app, the siren goes off, and by the time I go to accept it, I accept it, and they say, "Oh well, someone else has taken it." Yeah. No, so for my experience, I think it's relative to your area. Now, I'm south of England, where our population is a bit more, it's a bit high population. There'll be a lot more volunteers, and I think the system's working here. But I don't know if it's working every part of the country.
Yeah, I think you've touched on something there, though. You're a volunteer. You've been asked 4 times to do something, but every time you've been too late to answer the call, if you like. Now, that would become very frustrating, I would expect, for a volunteer, for someone that's actually made that mental leap to put themselves out there to help, and they never get a chance to help. I would be quite disillusioned if I was in your shoes.
Well, I feel that there's a lot of volunteers around, my region, and people just, if I don't get to the phone to request it, someone else has already taken that. But the question remains: people are questioning the NHS voluntary system. Some are questioning the home testing kits. Now, what the worrying factor is that why isn't this government ahead of time slightly? Why are they always playing catch up with everything they're doing at the moment?
I think part of the problem is one of will. I don't know that they actually have the will so much to catch up. Also, because they were so far behind at the very start, they have to run twice as fast just to stand still. So, they've put them in a position where it's almost impossible to catch up with the rest of the world. I mean, thank God we're not in America, where you've got the president telling people to inject disinfectant into themselves. At least we're not at that stage yet.
Well, going on that note slightly with Donald Trump, He's saying being on the beaches, being in warm weather, humid conditions, is actually a disinfectant for the coronavirus. He's opened up the beaches. He's encouraging people to go there because that's the best way not to get the virus.
And according to Donald Trump.
Yeah, and jokingly he said that maybe we should inject ourselves with some disinfectant. But that was a lighter note. On a serious note, it makes sense. Humid, hot conditions is actually a disinfectant for the coronavirus.
Well, it makes sense from the point of view that vitamin D is clearly good for you in these situations. However, opening up beaches to large groups of people when you've got a virulent virus like COVID-19 out there is irresponsible at the very least, and possibly criminally negligent at the very worst.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's that worrying factor. Would the outbreak, happen again? Now, there's one country where Turkey, out of their 81 states, only 31 are applying the law. Everyone else is just it's the time of Ramadan now, where people are fasting and they need to congregate in mosques for prayer time. They haven't really taken that rule and that step so strictly, and therefore the crisis in Turkey is very sort of up. It's up there with all the other countries, and in fact, it's had the worst hit crisis. And this is one of the reasons why the whole country has not been on lockdown.
Well, the evidence is clear. I mean, if you keep people in their homes, you keep them from socially interacting with each other, the virus will be starved of a host and it will eventually go away. Now, the fact is that if you send people to the beaches or you send people to groups for Ramadan or any of these other things, you're not socially you're actually spreading the virus. And if you spread the virus, it's not going to go away for a long, long time. I mean, the whole fact is that this country and every other country on earth is going to have to learn to live with this virus for some time, because medical tests on vaccines take about 12 months. Nothing is going to be put out into the public in a very short space of time without proper medical testing. So we have to find a way to work with the virus. And we touched on this yesterday, but the economic impact of this is going to be so great that the sooner they can open up the economy in a safe way or a semi-safe way, the better we'll all be. But they can't do that if all you're going to do is to end up with another spike in deaths. Now, when you say you could end up with another virus spike, I mean, we're still in the middle of one. I mean, 600 plus people died yesterday. 700 plus people died the day before, and 800 plus the day before that. I mean, we're in a situation where we're having deaths at a rate that a war wouldn't provide, yet for some reason, we don't seem overly upset about it. I mean, it seems like a bizarre thing to me.
Yeah, because I think what it is that the World Health Organization is saying we need to see a dip in the curve before we can start making you can start catering the idea of opening the economy, get people back working again. But they were thinking of getting people back. In Spain, they're opening schools again. Start on Monday when Boris Johnson comes back, Spain will be opening their schools again. So
I feel to see what impact that has.
Yeah, I feel that this government is following how other countries are behaving with the virus, which I think that's their strategy.
They're following, not leading. But think about this. This is an analogy I read on Twitter yesterday, and I found this really fascinating, because if you put this into context, it makes you think about this thing a bit differently. Someone put on Twitter yesterday that I read that every single day in the UK is like a 747 crashing. That's how many people are dying. Every day, 747 goes down. Now, could you imagine if a 747 crashed every single day in the UK? Could you imagine? Could you just imagine the news, the outcry? It would be horrendous. Yet for some reason, we're accepting the amount of people dying every day, and we're not really challenging the government on its response. I mean, the journalists that are asking the questions at these press briefings, the questions are pathetic. No one's actually putting the torch on these guys and saying, well, hang on, you cocked up. What are you going to do about it?
Because I feel that England at the moment, the way the leadership is, where the democracy is, and the economy, I think they are in a position where, they want to get out of Brexit as soon as possible. Also, and with the economic decisions, they need to think about that as well. So I think this has been a bit of a difficult time for the UK because they want to get out of Brexit. They've also working out what's the best way to do that, but also they're thinking about the health and the safety of this nation. They know they delayed this, and now they've extended the lockdown so it doesn't have a second wave of it. I think this is very interesting times for the government, the media in this country, how they challenge and impose which direction is this country going in.
Yeah. Well, I think that the country's going in a really dark place. I mean, even with Brexit, they don't need. The European Union offered to extend the Brexit transition period, given that the COVID-19 crisis is taking up everybody's resources and nobody is spending any time negotiating. And Michel Barnier was on the television yesterday lamenting the fact that the UK are not taking the negotiations seriously. Now, the UK have flatly refused to extend the transition period. So what we're going to end up with, of course, is a crash out. Now, that crash out, which I think is Tory party policy, by the way, but that crash out will impact the UK far more greatly than it would have done anyway because of the COVID-19 crisis, because the COVID-19 crisis is essentially bankrupting us. When we crash out of the European Union, we're going to lose our largest trading partner overnight, and we're going to have tariffs and various other things imposed on the goods that we trade with them.
Yeah, but this is my whole.
That is not going to be replaced by the USA. It won't be replaced by the USA.
Yeah, but we've had great prime ministers, great leaders. We've got people who are great thinkers, and I think for Boris Johnson. I think he needs some help. He should bring in the like of Sir John Major, Tony Blair, David Cameron, and then we've got some great thinkers, great leaders in different.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Religions and groups. Yeah, he should develop a committee together and just put his hand up and say, you know what, I need some help from the great thinkers and great leaders, and then that would show a really sense of good leadership and good direction as well.
Yeah, I agree entirely. But if you've watched Boris Johnson over the last 20 years, you'll realise that he would never do that. His ego will never allow it. But also, it's an admission of failure on his part in a way to ask for help. Now, he's not going to do that in a million years. He would rather see the economy crash and burn and people's lives ruined, which is what's going on. I mean, you can see it, I can see it. I say the vast majority of people can see and agree with what you've just said, but it's not going to happen. The bottom line is it's not going to happen. So, unless the Tory party replace Boris Johnson, or unless they have a change of heart or something, we are going to be where we're going to be. And, I think that as a result of both COVID-19 and the policy towards Brexit and everything else, we're going to be a much, much poorer nation. And there will be a lot of unemployed people here. There'll be a lot of sorrow here and a lot of unhappy people.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting times. Boris Johnson is coming back to work on Monday. It'll be interesting to see which direction he navigates the ship. He's the person, he's the prime minister, he's the leader. He'll be making big decisions. And him becoming a prime minister of this country, we will see his skill set of how great of a leader he is in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I agree. One fun note I'd like to make about Boris Johnson is I think he was ill, but if he's coming back to work on Monday, he clearly wasn't as ill as he was made out to be. I know for a fact that if you go to intensive care, it takes months to recover from that kind of treatment. It doesn't take weeks or days. So, sure, I'm sure he was in there. I'm sure that he makes a really good story for the Prime Minister to have been affected by this thing, and therefore he's in it with everybody else. We're all in it together, that sort of rubbish. But at the end of the day, he clearly wasn't close to death. Otherwise, he would be off work for a lot longer than this.
Well, we can debate on many different topics. I think all eyes are going to be on him on Monday. And let's see in the next couple of weeks how he responds. and we can continue our discussion. Our fourth episode will be here tomorrow.